Hey guys, just got done watching 2005's Fragile, which I got from Half Price Books for $3 a while back. And I have to admit, this movie, when it first started, let me just adjust that a minute. When it first started, after the first about 20 minutes, half an hour, I was like, this is going to be a really bad movie. But in the last half an hour, you kind of see what it was trying to do. And it goes from being a potentially bad movie to a kind of beautiful movie in the end. It's really weird. It just is so nice and just so great, the ending. But it made me go from like a possible 2 stars to like a 4-star movie. It's one of those films. It's a very slow moving film, and it pieces everything together. When you get to the end, you see what it was trying to do in the earlier part. So, okay, let's get on with it. So, basically, the film stars Callista Flockhart, who was in Brothers and Sisters, and Ally McBeal, or as I like to call it, Ally McSquill. Richard Roxburgh, who was in Mission Impossible 2 as the main henchman. I can't remember his name in that. Elena Anaya, Gemma Jones, Yasmin Murphy, Colin McFarlane, Michael Pennington, and Daniel Ortiz. And obviously there's a lot more than that. But, yeah, so basically, the film starts off... Hold on. The film basically starts off with the girl going to the nurse. And basically she says to the nurse, I can see it again. And she goes, get to bed, basically. And then the girl's laying there, like, and the boy next to her sits up and screams. And you're like, oh, what's going on? And it gets taken to, like, an x-ray machine. And they take an x-ray. And then you see he gets another, like, fracture in his arm. Like, and you're like, what the hell? And basically then it goes 2 days later. And this is in Isle of Wight, which is in England. But I've heard that it's also, I'm not sure if this is true, but I heard that a lot of it was filmed in Spain as well. But I'm not going to go on that because I know it's part Spanish, part English production, but I'm not sure because it did look like Isle of Wight a lot to me. So I'm not sure because I haven't really been there and I ain't been to Spain. So I'm just going to say it's a decent movie in that aspect, setting. And so anyway, and then we meet Amy Nichols, who was a nurse with a sad past. And basically what's happened is she's made mistakes in the past like anyone has in the medical field. And she's not very forgiving of herself, but she ends up getting this job. Let's see, can I remember it right? At Mercy Falls Children's Hospital, which is basically about to close down. There's only 8 children left there because they can't move because other places are packed. So Amy Nichols basically meets Roy, played by Colin McFarlane. He's a nice bloke, a little bit chatty, but he's a nice bloke. So she gets there and she wants to read their files, and the Helen Perez, the other nurse there, basically says, oh, you can do that later, because Amy is more, how can I put it, she seems to take her job a lot more seriously, if you get what I'm saying. So over the process of the film, a mystery kind of unfolds. And she gets to meet Maggie. And Maggie can see the girl, the mechanical girl. And people think it's in her imagination. But she basically is imagining the whole thing. And they believe that Amy is kind of projecting Maggie's faults because of what's happened to her in the past, for her mistakes. So Dr. Robert, basically believes that Amy is kind of seeing what Maggie is to kind of relate to Maggie because of the mistakes that Amy's made in the past. And it's very dramatic because there's a point where Amy is just kind of losing it because she kind of knows it's happening, but she can't actually prove it. So her and Maggie get closer and closer, and they basically talk about things like, what do you know, what's the difference between a kiss and a love kiss? And Maggie says a love kiss is when you get kissed on the lips. Now, this may not seem like anything, but by the time the movie ends, it means almost everything. And the movie moves along at a very slow pace, but at the same time, there's a lot of character development and there's a lot of storytelling going on. It's one of those films where if you like ghost stories that are slow and kind of build up to the climax and kind of move the story about, and you can kind of relate to the characters more, kind of understand them, kind of get to know them, instead of it just going, oh, look, it's a ghost story, people are dying, blah, 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 blah. Which kind of, to be honest with you, is the type of film I like in a ghost story, because I don't like movies like Paranormal Activity, you know, like where you get doors slamming, you meet the people, and there's nothing really there. But then in the last 10 minutes, you get all this stuff going down. I don't like that. I want character development. I want to get to know the characters. I want to know their history. I want to know what they have. Like Maggie has cystic fibromyalgia, which is basically a body deteriorating. Then you find out a little bit later that Charlotte is, as Maggie calls her, she had a condition where her body was basically breaking. Bone deterioration. He said it was something else as well as that, but I'm not going to repeat it because I can't remember, and it was quite a long one, you know, doctor stuff. So basically, she was thinking, and they basically put stuff in her like screws and that to hold her up, you know, like to make her. That's why she's the mechanic girl, because she had a lot of metal. And this is the ghost, obviously. And later on, you find out more about her. Like they're looking for files on her, and there isn't any. So they look at a projection. They see her basically being cut open and the stuff being put in her and stuff. And and when you see the video, you kind of see the horror in the girl's face. It's not obvious, but it's subtle in the fact that you can just see it and you kind of feel the girl's pain, you know. And then basically Dr. Robert is watching the footage as basically Amy goes to talk to Susan, and Susan. She gets there and she sees the mum, and the mum cries. And then the minister goes to the door, and you find out that Susan has died. Now, I think Susan was the original nurse at the beginning. I might be wrong, but I'm sure she was. So you're like, ah. So there's like this big mystery going on. And I really thought it was going to get really, really bad. I honestly did. And then Amy goes back. And spoiler alert, if you don't want to be spoiled, don't watch any more of this, because I'm going to talk about this a little bit longer. I'm just letting you know. So here we go. Amy goes back, and basically she goes, and Robert walks up to her and goes, her name wasn't Charlotte. It was, it was Mary. And basically she goes, it was what? And basically, he gets all. She finds that her name was actually Mary Phillips, and it's really, really interesting how the story goes, because you kind of get this sense of Maggie, like Maggie's narrating some of the movie, and it's really touching. But it's a child doing the narrating. And it's just like creepy, but it's not. It's creepy, but it's creepy in not a horrific way, but in a kind of emotional way as well. So the building starts crumbling, and the kids start getting fractures as they're trying to leave. And Amy goes, no, the kids can't leave, because if they do, they're all going to be in danger. So they try and stop them, and then basically the paramedics come and they take them. They go, why aren't they being hurt? And it turns out that Maggie went on the second floor. Now, earlier in the movie, when Amy first gets in, she's talking to the head nurse person. She gets told that the second floor is out of bounds and it hasn't been used since the 50s. And it's been kind of condemned, and no one goes there because there isn't a button for it either, apparently. And as soon as that was said, I knew something was going to happen on that floor. It was just so obvious, you know. It's kind of like in your face, you know. So Amy goes, oh no, Maggie's on the second floor. So she gets up there, and Maggie's there, and the girl is behind her, the mechanical girl, and Amy grabs hold of her and hugs her and goes, hold on to your teddy tight and all this. So the girl grabs hold of her. And then you finally get to see what Mary looks like. And it's just horrifying. When you think of the way Mary looks, you think of Hellraiser. You think of the Hellraiser, horrible things in Hellraiser. Not because she was horrible, but because it's so crazy and so horrible looking. And the problem is, you can't help but feel sorry for this girl either, this ghost girl. You can't help but feel sorry for her. Her breasts are showing, and they're really bad, and you're like, wow, this is creepy. And she's like, and her face goes like this. It's just really, really, really awful. So basically, Amy runs off with Maggie. She jumps, and she ends up getting stabbed in the leg with a pipe, and on the wall. And she runs along, and Mary turns up. Basically, Mary's not in it that long. That's the funny thing. You don't see her again once she leaves that room because it all crumbles down on her. And Amy and Maggie, they get out, but Maggie dies. And then Amy dies, and Robert is obsessed with trying to bring her back. And then you hear this voice, and you see Maggie's hand go on Amy's face and sitting on top of her, kind of thing. And she leans in and goes, she gives her a love kiss on the lips. And Amy wakes up. But it's a lot harder to describe it because it's a very beautiful, elegant scene. It's like one of those emotional things you just feel like right in your heart, you know? It hits you. It's so weird, it just does. And then you see Amy in the hospital and she talks, goes, why did I see her and all this? And they go, some things ain't worth explaining, Amy. And they leave. And as they leave, an elderly man's been pushed on a trolley thing. On a bed trolley. And he looks in, like breathing, because I think he's dying. And what does he see? He sees Maggie sitting next to her on the bed, smiling. And it says, and you hear someone that real love and people that really care, they never leave your side. And the movie just almost had me in tears because I got so emotional over it. Not because it was bad or anything, but because it kind of made you feel like everything you want to feel. When somebody passes on, like someone you love and you care about, you just hope that they're there with you in some aspect. Because one of the things that was said in this movie was when people die, they're on a part but you never see. But they see you know? Except for when you're like dying. So it was a really, really beautiful film in the end. And it was so shocking how wonderful it was. It wasn't a horror film, if you ask me. It was a spooky film with a really, really nice twist at the end, which didn't sell out and was quite original in my view. There were some gory scenes in it, like Roy, poor Roy. He's doing something in the room, and the blocks, the letter blocks, they move and go, don't touch. And he goes, huh? He ends up getting pushed with a nosebleed and he gets thrown out the window by force. And you're like, whoa, don't mess with her. But the thing is, unlike most ghosts where they're kind of evil or they've had a tormented past, for Mary, you kind of felt really bad for her. Because to a degree it wasn't her fault. You know, you never kind of got the aspect that she really wanted to hurt people, but that she wanted to keep people there because she was lonely. Now, I could be totally off the mark, but when Maggie went upstairs and she was there with Maggie, it felt like she wanted a friend. Not that she wanted to hurt her, you know, but maybe that she wanted to hurt Amy because she was trying to take away Maggie. Now, I don't know if that's wrong, but that's my view on the film. I honestly would recommend Fragile to anyone who likes a ghost story or a story with a kind of beautiful ending, because the movie it went from being terrible in my view for the first half an hour to being really quite amazing. And I can't believe that. But I'm not a big fan of ghost stories or ghost movies, you know, as per se. But this has become one of my top ones now because I really, really love the ending. I think it's beautiful. I think Callista Flockhart, I had to look at her name. I think Callista Flockhart was amazing. I think she was great. She really seemed like a troubled soul. And when she died near the end, before she was brought back, I actually thought that that was a nice ending as well, because she kind of had this troubled past, and it felt like by her trying to save Maggie, that she kind of was finding redemption for the mistakes she'd made in the past. And when she found out that Maggie had died, it was so heartbreaking, because it was like she tried her hardest and she failed. But when she came back, it felt like, no, she hadn't, really, because Maggie was there by her side the whole time. And it was just one of those things where you kind of felt so affected by it, but it was just beautiful. So, yeah. So basically, yeah, I recommend the movie. I think it's a beautiful movie, and I think it's one worth owning in any collection. Don't expect it to be a horror film, because in my view, even though it is a horror film, it isn't. It's more of a spooky film with a twist. I mean, it gets a little bit of horror at the end, but to me, it's not horror, but it's kind of like, I don't know, because it's classified as horror because it's a ghost story. But I'm trying to think what I'd call it. I'd call it a spooky film, obviously, but I'd call it one of those films where it's got horror elements, but at the same time, it's like a mystery. And that mystery is kind of, you know, I'm going to call it a horror mystery. Let's just call it that. I definitely recommend it. I think it's I think it's a really good film. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5 because I think it really picked up and it really made itself a lot better in the second half. And you just saw so much in the when you see the second half properly, you just see so much that happened in the first half, and you go, so that's why it was going slow. That's what that scene meant. That's what this scene meant. And it really works in the end. But you have to be a patient viewer, and you have to really kind of let the film kind of flow, and just follow it along, you know. So yeah, I recommend this movie. That's Fragile from 2005, A Ghost Story. Ooh. That's from 2005. I recommend it. This one's from Fangoria Fright Fest in America, so I don't know if it's available anywhere else, but if not, definitely make sure to give it a watch. And it's a PG-13. And I don't normally like PG-13 ones, but anyway, highly recommend it. So thanks for watching, guys. Take care, and remember, be careful not to get a fracture.